going to be a mastectomy case. She is a 35 years female, carcinoma left breast, no comorbidity, ERPR positive and HER2 negative. It was a plan to go for MRM with axillary clearance. On HPR, it came PT2, PN2, M0. So there were clear indication for radiotherapy and chemotherapy as well. So the patient received 4 cycles of AC, followed by 4 cycles of paclitaxel. After that, the patient was planned for radiotherapy. So we will show the contour of this case. Dr. Ishtiaq, please. Tabassum Madam and Rajesh sir will show the supraclav and level 2-3 lymph nodes initially. Usually we do not practice drawing this, but we are trying to adapt. So first of all, we'll show how we have drawn the lymph nodes. Then we'll ask for your opinion. Rajesh sir and madam, are you able to see the slides?
Yes.
You can see?
Yes.
Just give us 1 minute.
Maybe you can just let us know where the pre-op location of the tumor was and scroll through the images first. Which quadrant of the location pre-op tumor?
From where we have drawn.
Good evening, everyone. Actually, it is a case of locally advanced breast cancer.
Can you be a little louder? We can't hear you clearly.
Okay. First, we will going to show you the supraclavicular lymph node. And actually, we follow the RTOG guideline. According to the RTOG guideline, the superior border will be the caudal edge of the cricoid cartilage.
Can I suggest one thing?
Yes.
Yeah, can we put off all the contours and maybe you can demonstrate the structures which decide the various extent of the target volume. So let us start with that. Let us identify the structures which help in delineation of the volumes. So here with respect to supraclav. Let us identify those structures putting off all the contours. No,
Clear it.
no, don't clear it. Undo it.
No, I have duplicated the structure. Backup.
Okay, on the CT itself, you can put off all the structures on the CT1. Click tick it.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
will
I have-
automatically.
I have done it. Okay, so then
Yeah.
the superior border will be the lower caudal edge of the cricoid cartilage. This is
So
the
please show that.
cricoid
Yeah,
cartilage,
yeah. That's much better. Yeah.
and this is the lower end of the cricoid cartilage.
Yes, correct.
Now I'm going to start the contouring.
No. You tell us what are the other structures which decide the medial, the lateral. Tell all the structures. Demonstrate all the structures in the in this.
Okay. It is the superior border will be from this. The anterior border is the and most anterior portion of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. This is the sternocleidomastoid muscle,
Right.
and posterior border will be the anterior aspect of the scalenus muscle. Here it is the scalenus muscle is here. It is the anterior
Okay.
border.
Okay.
And medial border will be the medial edge of the carotid artery. Here is the carotid artery. Here, this is the carotid artery. And lateral border will be the sternocleidomastoid muscle cranially.
So can you clarify what is the two vessels that you see? Which one is the carotid artery? Which one is the vein? Which one is the carotid artery?
This is the carotid artery here.
Because the contrast
And vein?
is difficult to identify.
This is the carotid artery here. If we go down, then we can trace
Yes.
it. So now I'm going to start contouring of the supraclavicular node from the from the caudal edge of the cricoid cartilage. This is the cricoid cartilage, and I'm going to start from this. So the anterior border is the most anterior portion of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. And the posterior border is at the anterior border of the scalenus muscle, and laterally it is the sternocleidomastoid muscle, and medially it covers the internal carotid artery. So I will continue like this from cranial to caudal border.
So we are at the cranial border. Let us go till the caudal border.
I will go down directly to the caudal border.
Yeah, we can. You scroll through and take us to the caudal end.
Okay, caudal end will be the caudal edge of the clavicular head. This is the clavicular head here,
Yes.
and there is the last boundary of the sternocleidomastoid, the supraclavicular field, and the field will be like this.
Caudal border, I mean, where we are finishing the supraclav.
Yeah.
Quite low.
So can you go to the in the middle of the volume so that we can identify more structures? So yeah. Just a minute. Go down. Down. Yeah, go down. Again, one or two cuts. Yeah. So here you please tell us identify the structures in this cut. Yeah, stop it here. Stop at this level and let us identify the structures.
Yeah, this is the carotid artery, and this is the clavicle, and
Madam, is it possible for you to take over by TeamViewer at this step?
Carry on, you're correct. You can carry on, demonstrate the structures. So you have demonstrated the supraclave quite well.
structure, there is a carotid artery. And do you want to show me the other structures like trachea, esophagus?
No, that we will discuss in the axilla. So pertaining to supraclavicular contouring, we can just restrict currently to that.
Can you identify the brachiocephalic vein?
Brachiocephalic vein, this is the brachiocephalic vein here.
Where is the subclavian?
Actually, it is non-contrast image, so it is very difficult to identify the other structures.
Yeah, okay.
So basically, you can use your three-dimensional topogram to identify the lower edge of the clavicle so that you can cross-check it with the lower end what you're drawing. That will also help you. So with a topograph, that will help easier.
Oh, topograph.
And if you're following the ISTRO, so that is also ISTRO guidelines because that is vessel based. So even for that, it's very important to go to the other views to identify the lower end of where to stop the volume.
Where to stop?
If you are following the ISTRO guidelines, so that are vessel based. So if you cannot identify that correctly in the axial cut, you have to go to view the coronal and the sagittal images to get exact point where the vessels are bifurcating, because that is the point where the volume ISTRO volume ends.
Actually, we usually follow the RTOG guideline.
Yeah, I agree, and that should be the way. But I'm just for the purpose of completion, I'm mentioning that that without reviewing the coronal and the sagittal images, if you are wanting to contour according to ISTRO, you cannot do that without referring to the sagittal and the coronal images. So can you show us the bifurcation just for teaching purpose? Can you show us where would you stop if you would be drawing according to ISTRO? Rajesh, you can also, comment on this aspect.
Yes, Tapasu. Later.
Can I show you? Can I take the control?
Yes, now we can take the team over.
This one or is this? I am actually.
first.
So what I wanted to show you actually from here. The tool is not very easy to handle on remote. So can somebody scroll this?
Do you scroll down or up?
Down so that in this view, coronal view, not on the axial, coronal. Yeah. Yeah, so go back. Yeah, so here you can see, stop. One more slice down. No, opposite. Yeah. So here you can very well see this bifurcation. So that's why it's this is an important landmark for the caudal edge as according to the ISRO guidelines. So as was shown in the previous talk that the recurrences are quite common in the lateral and the posterior aspect of the volumes. So restricting to the ISRO is really very, very conservative, and I don't think so in the cases, especially the node N2 disease, the case in this case which was presented, it is okay to, it is not acceptable to limit with ISRO, and we should follow the RTOG guidelines only. Yeah, carry on now. We can move to the next volume.
Okay. Now the supraclavial lymph node is the, we have shown the superior and the inferior border of the supraclavicular lymph node. Now we are going to draw the axillary lymph nodes.
Here we have drawn level 2, 3 together. So Ishtiaq is going to say the boundaries, how he has drawn it.
If you can trace the pectoralis minor muscle, this is the pectoralis minor muscle, and we are tracing up so that we can identify the superior border of the axillary level 3. Actually, the superior border is the pectoralis minor insert on coracoid process.
Can we also again put off the contours, and then you can first identify the structures? So let us go from cranial to caudal, and you can show us the anatomical structures which help to decide the boundary.
Okay. This is the pectoralis minor muscle, and we are tracing upwards to
which is the muscle?
Pectoralis minor muscle. This is the pectoralis minor muscle. And we are going upwards to see the insertion on the coracoid process. Okay, this is the coracoid process of the coracoid process, and it is the most superior border of the axillary level 3, and its anterior border will be the posterior surface of the pectoralis major muscle. This is the pectoralis major muscle, and the anterior border will be the posterior surface of the pectoralis major. Posteriorly, there will be ribs and intercostal muscle. This is the intercostal muscle. Laterally, there will be the medial border of the pectoralis minor muscle. And actually, pectoralis minor muscle is barely seen here. This is the pectoralis minor. Is there is some insertion there? So the lateral border will be the medial to the pectoralis minor, and inferior border will be the axillary vessel when cross the medial edge of the pectoralis minor. So now I'm going to the the superior border of the axillary level 3, and now I'm drawing the axillary level 3 lymph node. Now I am going downwards.
Where would you stop, Cordaly?
Now the axillary vessel is, we can see the axillary vessel here. And when the axillary vessel will cross the pectoralis minor muscle, cross medial edge of the pectoralis minor muscle, there will be the caudal border of the axillary level 3. And from there, the axillary level 2 will be started.
Okay, so you can put on the structure which you have already contoured. Hopefully one.
Dr. Ishtiaq, please show the axillary vessels to the audience. Identify the axillary vessels.
Okay, this is the axillary vessel.
Yes, correct.
If we go upward, we are going upward. Here the axillary vessel crosses the medial edge of the pectoralis minor muscle. So this will be the caudal edge of the axillary level 3.
Customer, ma'am, do you want to add something? Dr. Tabassum, would you like to add something on this contouring, or?
Can you go one more cut below and show?
Sorry?
Can you get one more cut inferior, caudal?
This is the one more cut inferior.
Okay, one more cut down. Okay. Maybe I'll stop one more cut above this.
Here. So the exit level 3 will be stop here, and from here we will start the exit level 2 lymph node, and the superior body is the axillary vessel cross medial edge of the pectoris minor. So from here it will be exit level 2. And the caudal border, inferior border will be the axillary vessel cross the lateral edge of the pectoris minor. So this is the caudal border of the exit level 2.
Dr. Rajesh, would you like to stop here or you have to go down, one slice down?
So this is the
both level 2, level 3 combining and drawing together, or
we actually draw together level 2 and 3.
2 and 3 are combining together and drawing. Okay.
So from so then from this slide, the exit level 1 is starting here. The exit level 1, the superior body is the exit vessel cross the lateral edge of the pectoris minor. So from and the anterior border is the plane defined by anterior surface of pectoris major and latissimus dorsi. So this is the latissimus dorsi muscle, and there is the pectoris major muscle, and this is the subscapularis. So the anterior border will be the plane defined by anterior surface of pectoris major and latissimus dorsi. Posterior border will be the anterior surface of the subscapularis muscle. This is will be the posterior border here. Lateral border is the medial border of the latissimus dorsi. Medial border will be lateral border will be here, and the medial border will be the lateral border of the pectoris minor. So I'm going to draw the level 1. So anterior border is between the pectoris major and latissimus dorsi. Posterior border, there is the anterior surface of the subscapularis. The lateral border is the medial border of latissimus dorsi. And the medial border is the lateral border of the pectoris minor. So this is the level 1. And the pectoral level 1 will be down to the most, the inferior border of the level 1 is the when pectoralis major inserts on the ribs. This is the first rib.
So you can remove the overlap of the level 1 and 2.
To remove, of course. So this is the most inferior border of the level 1, where pectoralis major muscle inserts on the ribs.
Can you put the topogram now, topo view, and see where the lower border comes on the. It looks okay.
Dr. Rajesh, what is your comment on this contouring of level 1, 2, and 3?
So this is the topographic view of the supraclav level 2, 3, and level 1 lymph node.
I think he's done a good job.
Looking correct.
Yeah. So we can quickly move to the other volumes.
Sorry? Other volumes?
Yeah, are you going to show other volumes, or we are this would be discussing planning
I
now?
think, we should discuss a bit on this level of lymph node. If from the participant they have any question, they can ask, or
Yeah.
you can also interact. We finish the lymph node, then maybe we'll go to the boost volume drawing. Due to constraint of time, we'll not go to the chest wall because the chest wall guidelines are clear. So let's finish off the lymph node. We'll take questions. Then we'll go to the how to delineate the lumpectomy cavity.
We have some questions from the participant. Yeah,
Shahjalal.
will be coming.
Hello, I'm Dr. Shahjalal. I'd like to know from which quadrant this tumor arises, because if it is from medial or central, we might also have to draw internal mammary lymph node, as the tumor is T2 and N2.
Excellent.
Here again, I would like to know the policy. I mean, are you treating IMN lymph nodes prophylactically, or is there any case selection for that?
In Bangladesh, in practice, if it is prophylaxis, we are not doing. But if it is positive, then we try to add the internal mammary. It's my practice. Actually.
Yeah.
I think it's a common practice here in Bangladesh.
I presume that this is N2 disease, so I presume that IMN is not involved. So would anybody still contour treat IMN?
So if we can, now we can draw the internal mammary lymph node. Internal mammary lymph node is the upper border is the superior aspect of the first rib.
Meanwhile, I like to ask something like during contouring or during simulation, we do put some guide wire like a wire.
We're not hearing properly.
During simulation, we do put some lead wire or some wire around the mark. We do some marking, like we try to mark the scar and the upper border, lower border during the simulation, which will help us to guide that we are not missing anything during treatment. So, how important that scar is? Do you want that scar will get the 95% or 100%? What is your recommendation? Because scar is very important. Most of the gestural recurrences happen around the chest scar. So you, what percentage dose you will allow or you will accept in the planning? Am I clear?
I would say it should be decided by the tumor stage. So definitely if the patient is T4, so the skin has to receive a good dose, 95% dose, so which you achieve by employing bolus over the chest wall. But for T2, T3 tumors not involving the skin, so that is a case-to-case decision, because very thin chest walls, it may not be possible to achieve a good dose because of the patient anatomy and a very thin chest wall, and you may want to put a bolus in that for getting a build-up. So definitely for T4 lesions, you should treat the skin adequately. But for T2, T3 tumors, I would say the skin would still, if you are not using the bolus, the skin would still get at least 80 to 85% of the dose.
So if we put bolus, but hyperfractionation, what number of fraction you add bolus? Full fraction or?
See, the use of bolus should not be dependent on the fractionation you are using. It has to be covered. I mean covered, so it has to be 95%, 90 to 95% of the skin should be covered. So, so generally when we treat patients, and most of the patients would be on Linac, so to avoid skin sparing, we generally put it for the full course of treatment. We don't remove it, because when we observed our patterns of recurrence, we saw that even around the 3 centimeter around the scar, there were many recurrences. So we generally do not remove any bolus during treatment, and our fractionation schedule is 14-15, which is the standard. And if towards the end of treatment, in case patient has some reaction or concern, then we can remove it. But it's not by default. It is on case-to-case basis. By default, all patients receive bolus for all the entire treatment. And dosimetrically, you have to achieve the control the hot volume. So faced much problem while putting bolus for the whole treatment. Rajesh, what is your policy at?
For bolus, what we do is for all, like you said, for all T4 patients, we definitely use bolus, but we use 50% of the fractions with bolus. We don't treat all the full with the bolus. Maybe 50% we divide the plan into 2 with bolus and without bolus, 50% with bolus and 50% without bolus.
Yes, I do.
So initially that was our practice earlier. Yeah, so but after we gave a dissertation to a student, and when we saw that there was a significant recurrences in and around vicinity, so after that we, since a couple of years, we are doing it for the full treatment. So of course the practice is not very uniform, but T4 tumors should definitely, we should put the bolus.
Thank you, faculties. So sometimes in our clinical practice, we face some patients came to us after mastectomy with a large scar, and with the tangential field, the scar is not covered. So what is your practice actually? Do you use separately electron on that scar? I mean, whatever the size of the tumor or location of the tumor, but sometimes patient came to us with a large scar that is beyond the tangential field. So what is your practice?
So, which means such practice generally you get referral, especially in our setup, we get such cases only when the patient is not operated at our institute, because the surgeons know what are the limits of the conventional tangential portals. So they make sure that the scar is within the midline, it is within the mid-axillary line. I mean, they give us a scar which is at least 1 centimeter inside these boundaries. But in practice, we do get a few cases in which the scar is not extending, or it is a medial quadrant tumor or extremely lateralized tumor where for getting negative margin, the extent has crossed the conventional borders. So in such cases, you have to take into account the original tumor location as well as the burden of the current, I mean, the risk factors in the current pathology or the disease status. And definitely, you have to change the borders apart from conventional, away from conventional, if the tumor is located at that junction. So if it's a medial border, then you need to move the medial border to cover the original tumor bed adequately. But then you can leverage and not cover entirely the lateral part of the scar, and specifically because it is not that much at a high risk. And such cases where you are not following the conventional borders, you may, especially for left-sided, you may have to use special cardiac sparing techniques.
So if the tumor is located in the lateral side and the scar is beyond the mid-axillary line, so do you practice electron? My question was that. Separately?
Yeah,
electron.
occasionally, if that was the site of tumor locations, and then you may have to use photon for the tangents, and the superficial part may use electron. But such cases are very few, I would say, in clinical practice. Rajesh, what is your
Any comment from
practice?
Rajesh, sir?
As you said, mostly the surgeons will be, when you're having in an institute, definitely the surgeons will be more knowing what your tangential field portals would be. So they try to limit their scars within that. But whenever it's going sometimes beyond that, maybe it must be because the tumor was extending there, then we can try to limit your tangential field and then put an electron field posterior to that. But that will be very less percentage. Maybe we can say 2 to 3% of all patients, not very huge numbers.
Yes, very few patients.
Yeah, very few patients. So that would actually, now we would be more actually comfortable if suppose patient is unable to do breath hold or anything. So rather than going to electron, the other alternative would be to give some hybrid plan. I mean, IMRT with hybrid. A combination of tangentials and IMRT. So that is a case for that technique as well. So you have to see the reproducibility and all other issues, how well the patient's hand movements are, how reliable the patient setup is. So all those things can be considered for decision making.
Thank you so much, faculties. Now we'll move on with internal memory. Dr. Ishtiaq. Will you show us the internal memory?
Okay. So now we are going to start the intermemory lymph node. It is the start from the fast rib with junction of the.
We should also discuss planning, because that is very important actually. So maybe you can quickly show the.
Okay, I will go first.
I will move to the planning thing.
This is the fast rib, and this is the head of the manubrium. And the junction between these two structures, from this level, we will start contouring the intermemory lymph node. And includes the vessel.
Meanwhile, we will take a question from Dr. Jannat.
Hello, my name is Dr. Jannatul Firdaus. So my question to you, if a patient come to me with stage 2B, suppose P2N1 disease, and she is a case of PNDC, and she received neoadjuvant chemotherapy, 8 cycle, and she then underwent BCT, lumpectomy with axillary clearance, where histopathology reveals there is complete pathological response, no residual tumor, and axillary clearance shows there is no axillary lymph node made. So my query to you is, should I irradiate axillary lymph node? And if the answer is yes, up to which level? And in this specific case, when I will irradiate the breast, then what should be my posterior margin? As we know, there are two different consensus, ESTRO and RTOG. So what should be my posterior margin of the breast CTB? And my another question is, in case of electron boost, in our center we do this manually. So how do I will estimate the depth of the of the lesion, so that I can estimate the energy of the electron. And my another question is the indication of axillary lymph node irradiation. When I have to irradiate the axillary lymph node, and up to, can you please clear me up to which level I have to irradiate in stage wise? Thank you.
Actually, irradiation, it is not dependent on stage wise. It depends upon like how much is the pathological positivity rate. So even if the surgeon says his axillary is fully cleared and path shows that there is no extranodal extension, there is no indication to treat the axilla. So you can treat the axilla only when there is extranodal extension present. If there is no extranodal extension, it's not necessary to treat the axilla. So
there is a cross-positive disease, positive disease left behind, inadequately treated axilla. Only those are the scenarios, because giving both the modalities increases the risk of lymphedema to a great extent.
regarding the electrons depth you are asking, maybe you can have an imaging where you can see the depth, or you can use an ultrasound to see what is the depth, and you can calculate the electron energy, whatever it's needed to do. But whenever the surgeon feels that is in a wide local excision, definitely they should put clips in the post-op bed. If the clips is not there, it becomes very difficult for you to control the tumor bed growth. So clip placement is very important, which you need to stress to the surgeon whenever they go for a breast conservation surgery. Whether it is post-neoadjuvant or upfront surgery, that is definitely necessary.
So, have you finished?
Yes.
Tell us where will you start and where will you finish?
So I have said the superior border. The cranial border is the caudal border is the superior aspect of the fourth rib. The fourth rib has will coming this way. Yeah.
So here again, if you could go to the coronal and the sagittal sections, it will be helpful for you to understand where the intercostal space is and where it is stopping. Where to stop at the distal line. Yes. So you can scroll your
the coronal view you could move. The coronal view, yeah.
Yeah.
Go more anteriorly.
is the first rib here. And this is the cranial border. I am going down.
No, but you have to get at that angle. Move this thing. Yeah, so now here you can see how many spaces you have contoured. Yes. So here you can clearly appreciate exactly till what intercostal spaces you have contoured. So you can see your volume is a little less inferiorly. Or only a couple of slides cuts, I think.
So it will go down, more down.
Yeah, a bit, one cut I feel.
Okay.
So generally, we don't do prophylactic irradiation, and for patients, the first 3 intercostal spaces is generally recommended in case you want to do prophylactically for tumors in the outer quadrant, and for central and lower, inner quadrant, central and inner quadrant, you can include up to 4 spaces because the incidence of lower space involvement is higher in the central and medial quadrant.
If there are any question regarding the contouring of lymph nodes, we can take now, but otherwise we'll move to the planning section because we have constraint of time. Dear participant, do you have any question? Faculties, do you like to add something, or we will move to the planning section?
I think we should move on with the plan evaluation time because it's only 30 minutes still left.
Yeah, so we should discuss planning now.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
I think he deserves a big claps.
Yeah, he did a good job. Yeah, really a good job. So he knew the anatomy as well as all the structures. He has contoured properly.
Thank you, madam.
Inviting our physicist, medical physicist, Shimul. We will discuss the planning, and then we'll discuss the evaluation, how we will evaluate the planning, which planning should we accept and which will not.
I think if it is possible for any of the faculty to take over by TeamViewer, and there is a plan which we are uploading now, to comment on that, that will be easier. You just scroll up and down and say whether it's okay or not. Those color was there.
So this is a breast case?
Yes, same case.
This was a no, it's a chest wall or it's a lumpectomy?
This is a chest wall that we have done.
So this is a mastectomy case, right? So lymph node as well as primary has been we are irradiating. So I will ask my physicist to take comment on the planning aspect. First of all,
so please welcome medical physicist from Tata Memorial Hospital. We are very happy to have among us Reena. She is a physicist from Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say, so is this a dual isocenter technique? Yeah. No?
Single.
I want to see the other view. So where are the other view? I mean, I can't, yeah, so from where do we have to check the BEV? Yeah. So is this a monoisocentric technique?
Yes, single isocenter.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, I want to say the energy 6x is the proper energy. It can be used. So first, we need to measure.
So this is a mixed energy plan, 6x and a 10x plan.
Okay.
So I would like to know why this is if this is a monoisocentric technique. I mean, what is their policy of using symmetric or asymmetric fields? Because generally we would put one field x1 would be 0 if we would plan monoisocentric technique. So is there any protocol or any reason for not making one field as 0?
There are several techniques to prepare this plan, like monoisocentric technique, half beam for supraclav, also Chestall. But here, this plan done by some other physicist, he did this plan like full beam for Chestall and a half beam for supraclav only.
So usually we do not draw the supraclav and the level 2-3 lymph node. So for chest wall we draw, and for supra we put a field and then we match. So it's a single isocenter and half beam block combination.
Yeah, so this is not a full half beam block. That is what I'm trying to understand. I mean, this is a partial, this is not a full half beam block because your X1 is open. I mean, it should be 0. So any particular reason for this?
No particular reason for this. Usually we do many plan for half beam for chest wall as well the supraclav also.
So because this is, so we would see how you have put the cardiac shielding.
So we want to see the BV. So this is okay. So
SCF they haven't drawn. And this is the heart.
what is this?
That is the dose we are able to see.
Okay.
So so do you use FIF or do you use wedges in the fields, or you don't use it?
I think it is a fill and fill. There is no wedge, I could say. It is only fill.
Yeah. So this is.
In this technique, we used only the field and fill technique instead of wedge.
Yeah. Okay. So it's actually a little time consuming when we just try to get that thing field in field, because wedge gives a good option for getting for improving the dose coverage at the medial and the lateral aspect. but FIF is generally recommended, especially when this kind of tumor, when this kind of anatomy where the large part of the heart is coming within the radiation field. So, Reena, would you want to comment what should be the weightage of the subfields and all that thing? MUs and
I think MU seems to be like in one field it is coming. So it is a hidden field, so there is no issue with the MU. But when you use the wizard, then MU means sometimes we approve the plan and it has gone for treatment. Then it cannot be treatment approved. So we have to think about the MU in that case. But here, I think in acidomic waste, the issue is
so if it is a FIF along with the wedges, so you have to remove the wedge from the field that is going to be used as a subfield, because otherwise it's not deliverable. So that is one thing which is important to note. So here I would like to see what dose is there. So its mean heart dose is around 3 gray. So that is, I would say, just acceptable, because considering the unfavorable anatomy, a long cardiac distance, contact of the cardiac silhouette is long in this case. So we would have, so we would also see what is the isocenter placement, check all the isocenters position in the supraclav and the this field, tangential field. So it is same. So that has to be checked.
And what is the algorithm used for the calculation? If you can say the calculation model. Calculation model here.
This is a sum plan, that's why you would not be able. So maybe you can pull out individuals. So do you do the calculation in AAA or in Acuros?
It is done by AAA.
Yeah. Here we use Acuros for the breast cases, because the inhomogeneity of the lungs, that Acuros can take care better than AAA. So we use very strictly Acuros for the dose calculation in the breast cases.
Because as you know, we have discussed and I had shown in my talk also that in hypofractionated radiotherapy, restricting the dose volumes or overdose volume, that is 105, 107% is very, very important. So because of the differences in the treatment algorithm, we have noticed that when we do the calculation with Acuros, it gives a little higher hotspot compared to AAA. So we have moved towards using Acuros for all cases. Though it is it takes a little more time, but I think it's worth doing it.
Accurate, it will give the most accurate deliverable dose.
Thank you. We have only 10 minutes in our hand. So I would like to request the faculties to give some point. What is during the plan evaluation, what few points an oncologist should remember in their mind that to accept a plan? And this one thing. And second, what are the okay, first we may discuss this one, and then the dose distribution, the homogeneity, little bit of that point, because only the 10 minutes we have. Very simple way to the participant.
Rajesh, you can speak first, then I think I can add once you have done.
Actually, I'm not hearing very properly. Like, her question was about dose homogeneity and conformity.
Do you evaluate plan?
How to evaluate plan? First thing.
Yeah, tips for an oncologist for evaluation of it.
Yeah. So what you can evaluate first you see the beam arrangement, where the beams are placed, whether it's placed properly or not. How the isocenter is placed, as you said properly, it needs to be a single isocenter, which is much easy to plan. You can have the one for at the junction of the supraclav and the tangential fields. and we can have a monoisocentric technique, which is much easier. But if you're not having a supraclav field, then you can have a tangential fields. And beam placements and weightages, basically you need to play around with your weightage and with field and field technique to get what you try to achieve. Mostly when you're trying to evaluate a plan for breast, maybe at least 95% of the volume should cover 95% of the dose. That is one thing, and OIR critical doses to keep it under control. The hotspot, you try to limit it to 107 or 108, which would be a bit difficult for the physicist. Sometimes it's possible, but most of the time when the contour is irregular or when there is a gross defect after the surgery, when the chest wall is thin, it becomes very difficult because of the lung and the chest wall interface where you have a lot of other hotspots. And it's very difficult to both the confirmed plan and homogeneous plan. I think physicists will agree to it. Either you need compromise in breast planning, either on homogeneity or on conformity. Maybe VMAT, if you have, you can get a more homogeneous and a more conformal dose, but at the expense of a low dose, which is going to be spread all around. Tabasmi, to continue?
Yeah, so the first thing which when I start with plan evaluation is whether our target volumes are correct. I mean, you have to go back and review the clinical details. So, and specifically about the indication as well as the target volumes. Second, I would see whether the patient has any morbidity. Very, very careful while accepting any overdose to the OERs, be it lung, be it heart, and specifically patients with cardiac comorbidity or any recent history of bypass or ischemic heart disease. So these would be the patients we would very, very carefully plan and consider for breath hold techniques. Then third thing, which is technical, is I would first review the CT scan, planning scan from above to the end, just to see whether what is the anatomy like, whether any seroma collection is there, whether any other concern like any mets are visible, because sometimes patients have been waiting since quite time and there has been some lapse from the time of surgery, or what is the position. I mean, sometimes because of restricted arm movements, there are folds. So before amounting to planning, these would be the few things which you should have a quick look through the CT scan, because whatever technique you employ, and if there are folds in the target volume, whether it is a breast, flabby breast which is hanging and there is a fold in the inframammary region, or it is a neck chest wall case where the patient is unable to abduct properly and there are folds, so you have to be careful, and if required, you may have to not plan with 3D-CRT and you may want to change the treatment technique. Then the next thing obviously would be to tell the physicist that whether the fiducials which are put on the midline and the mid-axillary line are appropriate for target coverage or not, because especially in cases where there is lateralized tumors or at the medial extent or in the lateral extent. If there is a tumor bed located there, then you may have to change the entry and the exit. And this has to be, you have to be very, very cognizant of this when you are writing the case for planning, because as such, FIF technique takes such a long time to get a good optimal plan. So a preliminary look at the CT, you can tell that no, in this case, I may have to go 1 centimeter below, or you may have to move the border 1 centimeter anterior, depending on, in order to avoid cardiac irradiation or reduce the lung dose. So, and rest of the things ensure that the monoisocentric technique is employed and the bolus has been linked in case of chest walls, and you are able to employ MLCs for the heart and such things. So dose distribution obviously has to be slice by slice from superior to the end of the target volume, and you have to also be cognizant of the organ at rest. So these would be the simple things which we can start with and during plan evaluation.
Thank you. From the participant, do you have any question?
Okay, thank you very much. But I have two questions, especially for this patient. Do you practice, ma'am, in institute? Still, you put that guide wire on chest wall?
Lead wire?
This wire on the chest wall, while we do simulation.
That is very, very important to put to wire all the scars that are there. I mean, for lumpectomy.
Sorry, ma'am, not for the scar, for midline and lateral border and.
We put fiducials, not the whole wire, but we put fiducials at the midline and at the mid axillary line. We do put fiducials as well as at the superior and the inferior extent of the target volume. That is lower border of clavicle and 2 centimeter below the opposite breast.
Actually, fiducial is not available in Bangladesh. That's why they are using the guide wire actually.
So that's okay. So maybe the guide wire you are putting it to for the entire length.
Yes, in this case.
So that's acceptable, I think. And when we are putting fiducials, we do wire the breast also. So it's not only fiducial. We do wire the breast along with the fiducials. So because that helps in case you want to contour. So that helps you to guide your contouring also.
And for supraclav, do you use a single anterior field only?
No, we don't do any, I mean, fiducial or replacement of fiducial or anything for the supraclav.
No, I'm asking about the field. Only single field for supraclav or posterior?
Yeah, generally it is single field, but if we don't have the option of a higher energy machine, then we are restricted that we have to plan on a 6 MB LINAC also. Then sometimes we do APPA planning.
Okay, and last question, for example, this case, how much lung dose you would like to accept? I mean,
lung dose.
Yes, how about the V20?
Typically our V20 would be around 20 to 25% in cases of chest wall. So the limit of 30 to 35 is very, very liberal, and that should not be, I mean, the case for planning breast cancer. We should be more tighter, and I think restricting it to 25% would be reasonable. That too in a mastectomy case, we get a little higher V20. Rajesh, what is your take?
V20 to 20 to 25 is fine, but most of the time what happens in Bangladesh is they don't put a supraclav field and calculate the lung contribution from that. Maybe they should add that to this.
Yeah, so that has to be evaluated in a sum plan.
Supraclav field will also contribute to the lung dose, so that also needs to be added and taken into account.
Yeah, that is a significant contribution, I would say. So and it depends on what much coverage you want, you are accepting, and many things contribute to that.
One question for myself. Actually, when the lateral border is much posterior, we see that lung dose is much higher than what we expect. So if we have to go back due to the large base or the volume, so how much volume you will accept for the lung, and will you compromise the volume or you will compromise the lung dose?
So see, this, for example, particularly if this is the case, if you do you have respiratory gating, I mean, deep inspiration breath hold? If that you will amount to that, then I don't think so. You don't have it?
No.
Okay, so then it's a trade-off. I mean, how critical is her tumor stage, and also it will depend on that. I would not bother much about I mean lung dose, until unless you are restricting it to 30 and 35% and in the worst anatomy. But I would really be concerned about the heart dose, which should actually be strictly limited as low as possible.
Okay. One question from Dr. Ishtiaq.
I have a question. During simulation, do you always practice the deep inspiratory breath hold technique, especially for left breast lesion?
Don't do it for all patients, but we see, for example, maximum heart distance more than 1 centimeter, or patient is having comorbidities, then we screen it at the time of simulation, or when staging imaging is available in the OPD, we just screen through that and see at the level whether there is a likelihood of mean maximum heart distance more than 1 centimeter. So we screen, we don't do it by default for all patients.
Thank you.
And even a patient who is fit might not be, who fits in all the criteria, might not be able to do the procedure. So you might need to train them well also before you start the procedure.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful discussion.